Okay, good morning. So I think the last thinker, what we have to do is Hannah Arendt. So I think, did you go through the notes of Hannah Arendt yesterday? So what are the key ideas you have to study about Hannah Arendt? One is her view on our, the other is her view on totalitarian governments and ideology. And you can also look at Hannah Arendt's view of understanding her idea of politics. Hannah Arendt is also critic of what? Modernization. And what is the other key concept given by Hannah Arendt? The banality of evil. So we also called Hannah Arendt as what? A Cold War. Cold War intellectual. Why we call her as a Cold War intellectual? Because she belonged to the time period of what? When Cold War was happening. And I hope you know what is Cold War. What is Cold War? Basically the ideological differences that emerged between USA and USSR after the Second World War. And Hannah Arendt was also a German Jew. And you can say the Jews in Germany, they were subjected to, what do you call as? Holocaust. What do you mean Holocaust? Massacre. It means large scale killing of Jews. By whom? Hitler. And Hitler's ideology, or what we call, means we call as Nazi. The party, what he belongs to, Nazism, what we call also, it's similar to, slight differences are there with one more ideology which was followed in Italy called as fascism. So she had escaped from what the Holocaust and settled in US. So that's why I told most most of her ideas what she is given, it is based on her personal experiences. So in this regard, we have to first understand her critique of what we call as uh, totalitarian government and how she links ideology and totalitarian government system. So in general, what do we mean by totalitarian government? What is your general understanding of a totalitarian government? Concentration? And how it is different from an authoritarian government? Because we use the word authoritarian government, totalitarian government. So how they are different and or how in what ways they are same? Right? You see the word authoritarian government. You also see the word totalitarian government. So what is one of the difference between totalitarian government and authoritarian government? Hmm. Responsibility to. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. In more or so similar what he told. So one you can say in an authoritarian government, there is only control over the public sphere, not the private life of an individual. A totalitarian government where all the aspects of human life is controlled by the state, including your private sphere. So that is what we call as a totalitarian government. And if you see, when in democracies you can have authoritarian governments where power is concentrated in the hands of the state. You get a point. So even in a democracy, the what you can say, the gradient of democracy might vary. So within democracy also you can have authoritarian, like Indira Gandhi or Narendra Modi. Their style of functioning is more authoritarian style. Or when you take North Korea as an example, we call it more as a totalitarian government. Here it is not only public but even private lives of the individual is controlled by the state. That is what we call as a totalitarian government. Now, her analysis was that she wanted to know that why uh, in what you can say Germany, etc., what led to the formation of totalitarian government, and she also explored what is the link with ideology. Okay. So for Hannah Arendt, she believed that what ideology is mainly needed in totalitarian governments. Ideology does not have any significance in any kind of democratic governments, because for her, totalitarian governments, they make use of two weapons. One is ideology, the other is violence to control people. Okay. So ideology might be more of a non-coercive way. Violence is more of a coercive way. So she says that these are the two weapons of what? Totalitarian governments. That is ideology and I think. So in ideology, what will happen? A person will. So when we look at ideology, you can say you have discovered the final truth, or you believe this is the final truth, and there is blind following of that particular idea without questioning the rulers. Okay, and those who try to question the rulers in that regard, they are subjected to what? Violent run from the state. So ultimately, the goal is to what? Control the individual. So here she told ideology and violence are the two weapons used by the totalitarian governments. And she also went on to look into what led to formation of totalitarian government, especially in this thing. One might be ideology, the other might be economic conditions at that point of time. Third one, she also based on what? Modernization. What happened? So here man had become more of economic man rather than being what? Political man. Means participation in politics was means people did not participate in politics. So all the decisions were taken by whom? Individual leaders in that regard. She says that that is one of the reasons for rise of a totalitarian government. So here is what we need to draw a distinction between what she says. For her, when you take the most important activity done by human beings in that regard, it is to participate in public affairs. That is what she calls as action. Okay, humans can do three kinds of functions. One you can do is labor. Okay, the other you can do is work. The third most superior quality you can do is action. Here, action refers to you participating in public affairs. Now, what she says in these three, what you can say, human, uh, what you can say within our human sphere, what we can perform, the lowest level of action what we can perform is labor. Okay. The difference between labor and work is that in work you have created certain creative conditions to make your labor more productive. But for her, the most important action or most important element a human being can perform is what? Action. Action means participate in public affairs, and that's why I told she is influenced by writings of Aristotle, because Aristotle was one of the person who also who mooted the idea of civic republicanism. Civic republicanism means what? People participating in the state. So based on human nature, she has written a book called as On Human Condition. So you can note down that this is one of the important work written by Arendt on human condition. on human condition. Just a second. Yeah, on human condition. So what she says in this book is that for humans in that regard, the most superior action what you can perform is what? Means three levels are there. One is labor, the other is work, third one is action. So take down this one. So according to Hannah Arendt, she has said, in which work she has said? Please remember, on human condition. She has said on human condition that the most important, the most important function for humans, most important functions for humans is participation in politics. Participation in politics. Participation in politics. The question remains here, that is what she has said. Now we have to understand why is she saying that participation in politics is very key. So that's why I don't know why when you studied in initial period, whatever Plato, Aristotle have written, it is nothing but footnotes of the Western political thought. So what Marx is speaking about, what Hannah Arendt is speaking about, most of them they are speaking about what already Aristotle and Plato had spoken about. So you can say the influence of Aristotle even on Hannah Arendt. Why? Because same thing. If you have read Aristotle's theory of citizenship, what did he say? Only those who participate in politics, they will be given citizens. What Aristotle also said, man is a political animal, means what? One who lives outside the state should be either God or he should be beast. The meaning of that is that for man, state is very essential. So here we are referring to what? Participation in politics. So here also what Hannah Arendt she said, for any individual, you can perform three kinds of action. One is labor, the other is work. The most superior action is what? Action. Action refers to what? Participation in politics. The question is why? For her, or why did she say participation in politics is most important? How and how? What? So logically you need to connect to the next concept what she is given, power. You are understanding the interlinkage. So when previously what we discussed is totalitarian state leads to violence, means they make use of violence to control whom? Control people. Two tools they use. One is what? One is ideology, the other is violence. First only they won't use violence. First tool is ideology. Those who not agreeing or not following, they are kept in check by use of violence. You get a point? So for example, let us think now you are a person who is my fanboy. Means whatever I tell you tell Jai Jai, correct. Why will I use violence against you? There is some person who is questioning everything. Oh, how is this possible? Why is this possible? There you use violence. Why you use violence? To teach that person a lesson. So ultimately here is what? Control. So for her, in Germany at that point of time, because her main works are mainly understanding how totalitarian governments work and how what are the two weapons of totalitarian governments. One is ideology, the other is violence. Ideology is what you say indoctrination. So when we study the topic on ideology, there are two meanings to ideology. Ideology as science of ideas, ideology as set of ideas. The meaning of ideology as science of ideas is different. The meaning of ideology as set of idea is what you understand like politics, political ideology. Later you will understand there is a difference between a politician and a political theorist. Both are not same. Politician and a political theorist. For example, your studying of political science is mainly to become a political theorist, not to become a politician. Okay, a politician might have knowledge, that will be always good. But there is a fundamental difference in both. Me as a politician, for me the meaning of ideology is what? There is an idea which we believe is the absolute truth. You follow this idea. You don't question the idea. What the leader says, supporters follow. Understanding? Ideology as a set of idea is an aspect of a closed mind. Closed mind means questioning is not allowed. So that is a job of a politician. Political ideology or politics, be it BJP or be it the Congress. They need ideology to garner support. It can be either. The BJP will use its ideology to sustain itself in rule. Congress will use its ideology to displace them from rule. But ultimate both are looking for what? Power. And to capture that power, one tool you can use is ideology. But as I told, as a political theorist, your job is not to capture political power. You are disinterested in that. Your job is only to understand how this idea emerged. Why did this idea emerge? How much truth is there in this idea? You are understanding the difference between ideology, a set of idea, and science of idea. Science means what? Discovering the truth. Understand? Set of ideas means you are fixed to this. This is what. So for Hannah Arendt, when she is speaking about ideology, she is not speaking about science of ideas. She is speaking about set of ideas, political ideologies. So what is her argument? This ideology is needed in totalitarian government. That is one way you can control people. And those who disobey, they are controlled, they are kept in check through what? Violence. So you can see the end goal of use of violence. Violence can be used anywhere. Domestic violence, terrorists using violence. Violence can be used at every level. But the question is that what is the purpose the violence will serve? That is the main question. In your house also, let us say there can be domestic, husband might hit the wife. That is also violence. Father might hit the children. So the element is same everywhere, whether husband hitting the wife, father hitting the children, or terrorists killing people. Ultimate is what? Control. Create fear. Why you want to create fear? Ultimate to fear is that nobody should question your authority. That can be any kind of authority. So for example, let us take questioning of the state can lead to, as Hannah Arendt told, one is what? Use of ideology, the other is use of violence. Or questioning of religious beliefs. Any religion you take, Hinduism, Islam or Christianity. So let us think, if I make one comment on any one of the religion, one of the tool will be violence. Because they want to suppress your opinion. Why? Because that's political ideology, religious ideology, there is no difference. Both are same. In both cases, the thing is one. You have already assumed that something is the truth. And you are not ready to allow anybody to question that particular idea. Anybody, for example, let us take, in case of India also it happens that when Hinduism is questioned, people are attacked. In Pakistan, you can say when Quran is questioned, they are killed. The reason is why? Reason is because you have assumed this is the truth. This is my truth. You should agree to this truth. There is no other truth than this. And those who don't agree with it, those who agree with it means ideologically indoctrinated. You don't need to do anything to them because they blindly follow whatever you say. But those who try to challenge it, they are always subjected to what? Violence. So you take in Pakistan that those who question Islam have been killed mercilessly. Or you can take in Maharashtra when Savitri Phule she started the schools for women. She was abused. Means that is one way you will establish control. And that is when ideology fails, violence comes in. Understood? So that is her link, what she told. Now, when you exercise violence, you are basically stopping people from performing what? Public participation or political part. One of the important political participation should be what? Questioning. Questioning the government. Right? That is the essence of a democracy also. That there should be freedom of speech and expression. You might be wrong. That is what J.S. Mill told her. You might be wrong. But you should be allowed to speak. That is the essence of what? Democracy. And that is what she believed in civic republicanism. The core element of a human is what? He performs three types of action. One is labor. The other is work. The most important is what? Action. And what is action here? Public participation. You are understanding her link, her ideas. Why we call her as what? Phenomenological thinker. Because she is writing her personal experience. So what had happened in Germany? Plain and simple, in Germany, the state completely controlled everything. For that you read about fascism or Hitler's rule. I think I've told before also. Because in Germany at that point of time, or Hitler's rule, the first thing what Hitler controlled was universities. Because universities are the space where questioning will happen. Ideas are formed. Understand? That is why Hitler controlled most of the universities under his control. And that is when you can say many people escaped Germany, fled Germany. Why? Because it was only those who agree with him can stay there. Those who disagree with him, especially Jews, were targeted. And that is when she reflected upon that why this happened. Why Germany became like that? What is a feature of a totalitarian government? So our main concern always was what? To keep a check on rise of totalitarian governments. And her understanding was what? What gives way for a totalitarian government? It is people's not participating in public affairs. I think ages back, even Plato told it in a different way. Same thing he told in a different way. The penalty what you pay for not participating in politics is to be ruled by a person who is inferior to you. You get the point? The penalty what you pay for not participating in politics is what? To be ruled by a person who is inferior to you. Means if you don't have any kind of interest in public affairs or public participation, you will end up giving space for what? Those people who are not truly qualified to take up the space. So that is why for her, if people participate, totalitarianism will be kept in check. Question is how, and that is where you need to link her second concept, that is what? Power. So for Hannah Arendt, I think explained yesterday only, what is power? She says that people acting in concert, that is nothing but power. What do you mean by people acting in concert? Means people collectively performing public functions. That is how power. So the question is that how power is generated, from where power is generated. So she says that power is automatically generated when we come together. Simple example. Now let us think this fellow wants KPSC re-exam. He wants re-exam. He will go and sit in front of KPSC office, rain is coming. He'll tell, I'll do fast unto death. He alone. Nobody else is going with him. They will tell die, it's okay. They don't care. Let us think he will take some 10,000 people along with him. They also will sit and tell, we will also do fast unto death. Then the government will have to respond. You're understanding the idea? You're understanding her perspective. She says with individual power cannot be there. Strength is there. You're understanding, for her meaning of power is different. It's not the general understanding of power what we have. The general understanding of power is what? Me ability to control you or ability to exercise influence over you. That is power in general. If you take general definition of power or the mainstream theories of power that you'll read again when we read the topic on power, you'll read again theories of power. There again you'll read Hannah Arendt's perspective of power. So you have class perspective of power, you have gender perspective of power, you have elitist perspective of power. Common in all these perspectives, class perspective, gender perspective. In gender perspective, definition of power, one gender is exercising influence over other gender. Class perspective of power, same thing. One class is exercising power over other class. Elitist perspective of power is also same. Elites means few, they are exercising power over most. You are understanding? No matter which definition you take, the difference is the angle where we are seeing. But what we are seeing is same, control. But for Hannah Arendt, she disagrees, means her idea of power is different. For her, power is not control. Power is what? Power is the ability to fight against authority. Power is the ability to limit the power authority of the state. So that is where she draws distinction between power, force, strength, violence, as well as what? Authority. She says that these are all different words. Though we use generally, right? But she says these are all different meanings. Again, so according to her, we cannot tell an individual is powerful. Why? Because for her, power always exists in a group. Power cannot exist individually. So for her, how power is generated? When people act in concert. So that is what she says, power is sui generis. What do you mean by sui generis? Automatic. Who is giving power? From where power is coming? We are not speaking electricity power. In general, power is there in electricity also. That is different. That is what we are speaking about human world. So how power is generated? Simple. Now people coming together automatically generates power. People moving apart, power also evaporates. You get my mind? Power is sui generis. It is automatic. Automatically created when people come together. Automatically dissipated when people disperse. Again, connect back to same thing. For her, what is the ultimate goal? People should participate in public affairs. Now, that is one thing. Power is automatic, sui generis. Power always exists in a group. She says how power is different from force. Force is a terminology we use largely with when wind blows. It is exerting force. Get a point? So she says that is natural phenomenon, that is not belonging to human condition. What is strength? Each individual will have some strength. So she says strength and power are different. Strength is always with individual. Power is always with a group. Violence and power are different. Means for her, one way of exercising power is not the use of violence. How you exercise your power? For her, it is not exercise of violence, because violence and power are different. Violence is destructive by character. Power is constructive by character. So what Hannah Arendt says, violence destroys power and it is utterly incapable of creating power. Okay, so what do we mean by that? I don't know, this fellow is taken 10,000 people and protesting in front of KPSC. Now you will tell policemen, give them treatment, unleash your violence on them. Police will come, start belting him left and right. 10 people next to him also will get belted left and right. 100 people will run. Power is decimated. Why it is decimated? What is power? People coming together. But once your violence is exercised, power is dispersed. So if you go back to Indian national movement, why Gandhi did not use violence? Why Gandhi stuck to ahimsa? Because again, when you look from an ardent angle, for Gandhi, Indian national movement should generate power. So for Gandhi, what was power? The ability to resist the authority of the British. And that can only happen if people participate in large scale. And if you use violence, this will give legitimacy for what? British to unleash greater violence. And once British will unleash greater violence, power is dissipated. And that is why Gandhi stuck to most of the times to what? Ahimsa. Understanding how we can look at Gandhi's ahimsa also from a Hannah Arendt angle also. Okay, it's not that Gandhi has read Hannah Arendt and he has employed it. I'm telling, using Hannah Arendt's ideas, that we can study Gandhi's political strategy. That is what the topic you have in part B. Political strategies you have, means what are the different strategies used by different sections. So one was Gandhi's strategy, we saw yesterday also, that Gramsci, that is what, war of maneuver and war of position. From an Hannah Arendt angle also we can see Gandhi's strategy to bring more number of people into participation. Why? Once people comes into participation, power is generated. That is different. That's why I told, that's a critic, that we can bring it later. That critic is that what Ortega Gasset says, that you cannot tell always that when people come together it is going to be power. It can be also mobocracy, violent. Okay, that's a critic. But we are only looking at her idea. Okay, so for her, people should participate in public affairs. So that is why we say she is a proponent of direct democracy, deliberative democracy. Understood? So for her, violence and power cannot be equated. Violence is different, power is different. In fact, violence will destroy power. And that is why we say violence destroys power and violence is utterly incapable of generating power. And for her who exercises violence, state, that is the authority. For her, authority and power are different. Second point, in general terms, I'm telling, we'll tell you become IAS, you become powerful. For her, it's not like that. You get authority. Power cannot be with state. Power will be always with people. You're understanding? That's why I told she's a confused thinker. Means she's not confused. She'll confuse you. So her idea, her definition of power is very, very different from what generally you understand. General terms, layman terms, we can say, na, you become IAS, you will become powerful. For her, it is not power. For her, it is, you have gained authority. Authority and power are different. Authority lies with the state. Power lies with the people. For her, power is a check on the authority. Understanding? What is a check on authority? Power. If people participate in public affairs, then the misuse of authority cannot happen. And that is what she told. In totalitarian governments, what would have happened? Lack of people's participation. And it would have led to what? State becoming very powerful. State using violence and ideology. And that is why she says that what? The most superior action of human is what? Participate in public affairs. That is action. That is means participating in public affairs. And that is where she says that why you have to participate in public affairs? It generates power. And what is power? That is what I explained. She draws distinction between power, force, strength, violence, and authority. Got it? Any doubt here? You understood her major ideas. One was what? Her view on totalitarian government. Her view on human condition. Her view on power. The last aspect of her content is what? The idea called as banality of evil. So generally we use in sentence formation, the evil has become banalized. What do you mean by that? So what is wrong? It is no longer appear to be wrong. It has been normalized. Why it has been normalized? Not only repeated many times, it has been accepted by the people. They don't no longer find it as any time no wrong. That is only called as banality of evil. So you are ethically no longer you are finding it is wrong. It has been normalized as part of your life. So that is what is banality. So where she spoke about banality of evil in her work, the Eichmann. Of Jerusalem. So who was Eichmann? I told you Eichmann was a German soldier or officer, military officer. So he was put to trial for the heinous crimes that was committed. So for her, Eichmann personally did not have any grudge against the Jews. But she told, why did he do like that? Because he was unaffected or he was just following the commands of a bureaucratic setup. Means for him, he never felt it was wrong. He was just performing his duty. So she says that what can happen in societies is that with bureaucracy or etc., it becomes more like a mechanic system. So your critical thinking is not there. Your critical thinking means what? You are not thinking is it right or is it wrong if I do it. You are working like a robot. Command is given, go do it. Without thinking whether it is right or it is wrong, you go do it. So she spoke about a lot of what? Loss of critical thinking in society. When there is loss of critical thinking in society, evil becomes normalized. Why evil becomes normalized? No longer you are questioning it. When no longer you are questioning it, you are blindly following it. So that is why she also spoke about the significance of critical thinking. So when you take Hannah Arendt, she told when you take human action, humans can perform two types of action. One, as I told, is action. That is, she used a word called as vita action or something. The another thing is thinking. Vita contemplative. Means you can think, you can act. For her, in both are important, but for her, action is more important than thinking. If people only think, but they don't act. And under action, there are three types of action which we have already discussed. One is what? Lowest level? Labor. The other is what? Work. Third one is what? Action. The most superior thing is what? What is action? Public affairs. But humans also have the capacity to think. That is also one more human action what you can perform. So thinking is also important. But she is not telling more than thinking, what is also important? Participation. Okay. So when there is loss of critical thinking in a society, you don't think. When you don't think, you don't question. When you don't question, you are not performing what? Participation in public affairs. So for her, that Eichmann thing is that he did not have any personal grudge against the Jews. But what he lacked? Critical thinking. He was nothing but a soldier looking for promotion. Just followed. That is what she writes. But critics are there, saying that no, it can't be there. And the biggest critic against her work was that when she wrote that work, she did not attend all the hearings of Eichmann. She attended only 4 or 3. So they write that she didn't understand Eichmann. So that is why the work came under criticism. But that is what she told in the work, that Eichmann didn't have critical thinking. You understand? Holistically, these are the things that you have to know about Hannah Arendt. Her view on totalitarianism, her view on ideology, her view on human condition, her views on power, and her views on banality of evil. If you know this much, questions will come mainly on this itself, and you can easily write the answer. And it's not about this much. You need to learn to interlink also. Interlink in the sense, let us think tomorrow or later when we do a topic on democracy, you have to be able to link ideas of Hannah Arendt, J.S. Mill, John Locke, because it will be repetitive. Understood? Any doubt? Anything which you did not understand here? What is power? What is banality of evil? What is human action? Why it is important? So let's look into few questions that has been asked on Hannah Arendt. Take now the question as comment on comment on Hannah Arendt's idea of power. Comment on Hannah Arendt's idea of power. That is one question. Simultaneously take down one more question. Critically examine Hannah Arendt's conceptual triad. Critically examine Hannah Arendt's conceptual triad. Conceptual triad. Triad. T-R-I-A-D. Triad. Of labor. Conceptual triad of labor, work, and action. Labor, work, and action. Work and action. One more question to you. Comment on Hannah Arendt's understanding of politics. Hannah Arendt's understanding of politics. These are the questions that are usually coming. So, how will you approach these questions and how will you write based on the content what you have or what you know till now? First question is easy. What is that? Hannah Arendt's idea of power. So basically, if you want, you take down one model answer. So take down the answer as Hannah Arendt, who is considered as a Cold War intellectual, is considered as a Cold War intellectual. Has given her views on power are given her views on power. In her work on violence, in her work on violence, Next one, Hannah Arendt's understanding of power. Hannah Arendt's understanding of power is different. Hannah Arendt's understanding of power is different from the mainstream. Hannah Arendt's understanding of power is different from the mainstream theories of power. From the mainstream theories of power. For her, power is sui generis. For her, power is sui generis. Power automatically is generated. Power is automatically generated when people act in concert. When people act in concert. Next point you take on. For Hannah Arendt, power always belongs to the public real. Power always belongs to the public real. And not the state. And she also draws distinction between power and force. She also draws distinction between power and force. She says force is a characteristic of nature. Force is a characteristic of nature, whereas power is a characteristic of society or the human world. Society or the human world. Can you take on? She also draws distinction between strength and power. She also draws distinction between strength and power. Strength and power. So right on. Strength is a characteristic of an individual. Strength is a characteristic of individual. Whereas power it is a characteristic of collectivity. It is a characteristic of collectivity. Then you take on. Arendt also says power and violence are different. Power and violence are different. Power belongs to the people. Power belongs to the people. And power is constructive in character. Power is constructive in character. In character. Whereas violence belongs to the state. Violence belongs to the state. And it is what in character? It is destructive in character. It is destructive in character. Where she says, violence destroys power and it is utterly incapable of generating power. Utterly incapable of generating power. Understood? So now in my answer I have clearly told according to her what is the idea of her. So right, no, still answer is there. Write down it. Hence we can categorize Hannah Arendt's understanding of power. Hence we can categorize Hannah Arendt's understanding of power as constructive theory of power. Hence we can categorize Hannah Arendt's theory of power as what? Constructive theory of power, which is almost similar to ideas presented by Gandhi as well as Macpherson. Which is similar to ideas presented by Gandhi as well as Macpherson. However, her idea of power can be critiqued by Ortega Gasset. Who argues that when people come together and if it is uncontrolled it can lead to violence or in bracket you take down mobocracy. Nevertheless, one cannot ignore Hannah Arendt's idea of power, which is essential for any well functioning democracy. Democracy. So this is the answer that what you can write for Hannah Arendt's view on power. 15 marks. If it's 10 marks, just summarize. Means don't go explain in detail strength, violence, and all. Just write in one page. You can expand even bit more. See, it's all about explanation. If it's a 20 marker question, add more number of words and try to explain. If it's a 10 marker question, try to just summarize what you've written. So it's more about depending on how many marks they asked. So maybe if it's a 20 marker question, my introduction will be even more bigger. If the 10 marker question, my introduction will be very brief. So that again depends upon the question and depends upon the marks. No, you have to write critic for everything. For 20 marks, you have to write critic now. If you don't write critic, from where will you get the content? For every question, you will have to write critic. That's why writing critic or not writing critic depends upon the question what you are attending. Okay, it does not depend upon the marks. Got it? Any doubt here? You understood how to write answer, that's what I told. Your understanding is good, your ability to write decently well, getting 260, 270 is not difficult. Easily you can score 260, 270. To get that 300, you have to be able to bring some value addition, or maybe in some, not this chapter, maybe in some other chapters, current examples, what you can give that you can link or something like that. Got it? Any doubt? Or if you want to make your conclusion more unique, you can say that Hannah Arendt's idea of power has been reflected in the recent farmers' protest, where the government withdrew the ordinance. The power was able to resist the authority. And you can. But as I said, that's why I told, like Indian examples, why I won't tell in answer, because again it will be controversial. So you can use other examples in other countries where protests have been able to put a limitation on the powers of the state or authority of the state. Got it? So maybe in exam they'll ask question also, constructive theory of power comment. That is nothing but you have to write Hannah Arendt's view of power. They might ask question this way also, comment on constructive theory of power. Okay, that is nothing but Hannah Arendt's view on power. So this is what largely you need to know about Hannah Arendt. But as I told, other questions you need to write, like on totalitarianism, on ideology. So these are the Western scholars that are there for your exam. So it's like this is the soul of the PSIR. If you know Western political thought very well, along with two more topics, that is ideology and theories of state, your 80% of paper part A is done. Means in that sense, all other topics, what are there? Democracy, equality, power, legitimacy. It's nothing but repetition of same thing. When you read this topic, same again and again, you'll be reading the same thing. Okay. So that's what I told. The soul of the subject is Western political thought. If you know Western political thought very well, you know 70% of political science. Take IR also. IR again, what some people's concern is that it's very, very dynamic. It's not so dynamic. Yesterday also one student had come, sir, IR might be dynamic. I told, who said so? Where did you see? Same problem. My library people told, my classmates told, oh, okay, oh, you have your classmates written the exam. That's why the problem is that if you are a person who is going to bank on Google to do your health checkup, then what we can say? So basically, they don't have an idea. They just go by what it can say, the ecosystem, what it says. So obviously in IR also, if you take, they are not asking random stuff. They're only asking selected stuff. Like now Pakistan, this issue has happened. That might come in this mains exam. They're not going to ask right about Operation Sindoor. Of course, they're not going to ask that question. They might ask something related to India and Pakistan regarding policy. Or critically examine the recent India's policy shift towards Pakistan. For this, you don't need a book to read. If you have just followed the newspaper, it's fine. One, what did they do? Surgical strikes. Second one, blood and water cannot flow together. Threatened Pakistan. Or what? Keeping the Indus water treaty in abeyance. The word they've used is abeyance. Third, now recently you can say they've created an parliamentary committees, now delegation, to send them to abroad to set the narrative that Pakistan is the aggressor. And why did India take surgical strikes against Pakistan? Fourth move, what India did regarding Pakistan is also completely cut off the trade. India removed, what you can say, Pakistan from MFN status. That done before also. Now they started implementing. They closed down all the border trade, Atari Wagh border. Airspace closed down. The mass deportation of Pakistani citizens. So this you will understand once you read part A. There are theories. Okay, this is a more realistic framework what India has done. Okay, there is a liberal view also. Liberal view also says that no, we have to have talks, we have to improve trade. So point is that which framework we can use. They are not going to ask random current affairs questions saying that write about India and Pakistan, who said which statement, or let us say Prime Minister Modi visits Turkey. They are not going to ask a question write about India-Turkey relation. See the question paper, previous year question paper. There is no question asked on Turkey. They are only going to ask main countries which are there. And that too theory. Again theory, you can come back to Hobbes, to India and Pakistan situation. Security dilemma. The state of nature is what? State of war. Why there is state of war? Might is right, but what is human tendency? Maximize pleasure, minimize pain. There is no common authority. Self-help is the best help. So that is what India told when UN failed to act on Pakistan. We are forced to act by ourselves. But that's a different thing. What will be the analysis? What will be the implication that we'll do when we do India-Pakistan? Okay. These are the policy changes that has happened. But the analysis should be also known, right? Like if you take abeyance of Indus Water Treaty, it's not a tap that you go close tomorrow and open day after tomorrow. You need to build dams. And building dams has its own challenges, ecological challenges, financial challenges. In your mind, currently India has used it more as a threat, more as a mind game, the battle of minds, to warn Pakistan that you have certain vulnerabilities that you should not forget. Question is not that they will going to do it, because India is also conscious of the fact what will be the effects of it. What if tomorrow China does the same thing to India, given our dependence on Brahmaputra for China? Or what it might also send a wrong message to neighboring countries, especially with Nepal, Bangladesh, with whom we have still unresolved river issues, that they might brand India as what? A big brother, or a, what you can say, as a country that uses water as an weapon. India is also conscious of this fact. That is why they kept Indus water treaty in abeyance. So it's a long-term measure, but in short term it will work as a threat. You know point? So that is a different volume. So that's what I told. What you read about Hobbes, you can also link here in India, Pakistan. So what is making India and Pakistan behave such a way? Because it's similar to Hobbesian state of nature, where there is security dilemma. You understood? So that's why we say Western political thought, 70% it is of political science. If you know these ideas very well, rest of the paper becomes very easy. So what are the ideas you have read? Oh, read about Socrates, you read about Plato, read about Aristotle, read about Machiavelli, You read about Hobbes, you read about John Locke, you read about Jeremy Bentham, then you read about G.S. Mill, then you read about Karl Marx, and you read about Gramsci, and then you read about these are the scholars for your Western political thought. This is one component. As I told, first thing to do is that read them individually, understand their ideas. Second thing to do is that interlink, like how what Aristotle has said can be reflected in Hannah Arendt, or what Aristotle and Plato told was rejected by Marx. You're getting mind. So all the thinkers can be interlinked, and you have to know their key theories and works. So, for example, Plato. What are the works written by Plato? Republic, Statesmen, and Law. What are the important concepts given by Plato or theories? Theory of soul, allegory of caves, theory of ideas, justice, philosopher king, communism of wives and property, education. Okay, later then analysis of Plato as the first fascist, first feminist, etc. What is the major work written by Aristotle? Politics. What are the important ideas? Theory of state, theory of citizenship, slavery, constitution, revolution, justice. Major ideas of Aristotle. Then you have Machiavelli. You have relation between ethics and politics. Then you have his view on religion, his view on statecraft, and how to manage or run the state. Okay. Then if you take this fellow Hobbes, you have state of nature, you have human nature, you have social contract. That's it. And law and liberty, what is the relation? Same way if you take John Locke, same to same. Then you take Bentham, utilitarianism, because we are not reading Bentham in totality, we are just reading Bentham for the purpose of Mill. Take J.S. Mill, his modification of utilitarianism, his views on liberty, liberty of thought, action, and expression, not thought, action, and association, and his views on democracy, Mill's view on property. Got it? Then you have Karl Marx. You have historical materialism, dialectical materialism, class conflict, or what is class? Is revolution, is alienation, and surplus value, base and superstructure, socialism, communism. Then you have Gramsci, modification of Marx idea. Then you have Hannah Arendt, power, totalitarianism, violence, banality of evil. Got it? So that's what I told. This you need to revise multiple times. Why I'm repeating again? There is a difference between completion of classes and there is a difference between you being exam ready. Don't think no, what we have done, okay, my Western political thought is done. Not done for you. It is done for the class. Whether you know it or not depends upon how many times you revise it, how you are able to retain it, and how many answers you write on it. That is common with every subject. Any subject you do, GS or optional, this is what you need to do. Every subject you need to revise multiple times, write lot of answers over it, then you get command over that subject. And again I told, when writing answers, now since you have done all the thinkers, now you can go back and write some questions which before you had not attended, saying that because you had to have more knowledge. But now, since all the 8 thinkers are done, relatively now you can attend some more questions. Got it? Any doubt? So first read the written notes. Okay. Printed notes you can just use it for revision. It's like very short and brief. Okay. Written notes in detail. For Hannah Arendt and Gramsci, there is no written notes. It's only the printed notes. That is enough. For next topics and all, there is written notes. That is detailed explanation of what we do in class. That will be there. So any doubt in Western political thought? Understood? So we started from the idea what is a thought, what is a political thought. Okay, what is Western political thought? The beginning of Western political thought starts with Greek political thought. The features of Greek political thought. Understood? Now moving forward to the next topic. As I told, one you have to know about this. The other topic you also have to know about is ideologies and state. But before going into ideologies and state, we have to do something called as introduction to political theory, a topic which is there. Introduction to political theory. So you've seen I've already uploaded the notes on your group. Okay, all you have to do is download and read it. This is one topic. The other topic which is closely connected to this topic is approaches to political theory. Approaches to political theory. These are the two major topics what we'll be doing now. Okay. So first I'll break down and tell what we'll be reading in these topics, then we'll go one by one. So as you know, introduction to political theory, first of all we have to know what is a political theory. This is the first component you'll have to know. So once we decode what is political theory, then you'll understand political theory comprises of two aspects. One is, which you have already read before, political philosophy. The other is, what do you mean by political science? And we need to understand the difference between political science and political philosophy. Then we also have to read about the decline of political theory. So decline of political theory means when political theories have faced crisis. Okay, there are certain time periods. You have to know why that crisis happened, what are the reasons for it. And then we'll also have to look into the difference between political theory and political ideology. Understood? What are the contents that we are going to read in this particular topic? What we are going to read? What is political theory? Political theory comprises of two aspects, political philosophy, political science. What is the difference between political philosophy and political science? What do you understand by decline of political theory? Why did it decline? And largely, difference between political theory and political ideology. Understood? So this is the notes that is there in your topic that is there. So let's start with the first aspect. What do you mean by a political theory? What is meant by political theory? Okay, what is a political thought? Forget about the word political. What is a theory? Explanation of a phenomenon. A point. When you say political theory is what? A systematic explanation of a political phenomenon we call as political theory. What is polity that you already read before? In starting first class, what we did. What do you mean by politics concerning public affairs? So any systematic study, what we do to understand a political phenomenon, that we call it as what? Political theory. So theory means what? an explanation. So now when we take political theory, any kind of political theory, when they explain things, there can be three kinds of statements what we can make. So one is the empirical statement. Empirical statement. The other is logical statement. Logical statement. The other is evaluative statement. Evaluative statement. What do you mean by empirical statement? For which there is evidence. What do you mean by logical statement? There should be reason. What do you mean by evaluative statement? There should be values. Alright. So when you say political theory, it's a systematic analysis of a political phenomenon. To understand a political phenomenon or to explain a political phenomenon, there can be three kinds of statement. Empirical, logical, evaluative. So usually when you take this empirical statement and logical statement, these two largely what we call are part of political science. When you say evaluative statement, this is largely part of political philosophy. Hence we say that today political theory is equivalent to what? Political philosophy plus political science. Meaning for any political theorist to put forward his theory, he can use logical statements, he can use empirical statements, or he can also use evaluative statement. So for example, let us take Plato said democracy is not an ideal form of government. What kind of statement is it? Basically a logical, not logical, evaluative statement. It's not logical, it's evaluative. Evaluative means he is basing on his values. Or if somebody now says that in the recent, in the next, let us take Bihar elections, let us take, they do analysis and they'll tell BJP might win the election. What kind of statement that can be? It will be both empirical and logical. Means you collect certain data. Based on that data, why we are saying it's a theory? Theory can be false also. The results might be surprising, it might be different. But logically, we are predicting this thing can happen. And the basis of prediction is what? The data what I have collected and how I interpret the data and all. So today when we study political theory, we cannot compartmentalize political theory only as political philosophy and political science. Today, both political philosophy and both political science are core component of political theory. And that is why you have Andrew Hacker, who said every political theorist is partly a scientist and partly a philosopher. What he said? Andrew Hacker. Andrew Hacker, he said every political theorist is partly a scientist as well as a part philosopher. Partly a scientist and partly a philosopher. So why does Andrew Acker say that you are partly a scientist and partly a philosopher? You're a scientist because you want to understand the political realities, how humans are actually behaving in politics. And why you are also a philosopher? Because you need to also prescribe and say what is an ideal form of political system. So without either one of them, political theory will be incomplete. So when we say political theory, today we largely agree that there is political science and political philosophy. So that brings us to the next question. What is the difference between political science and political philosophy? First I'll give an explanation, then we'll go into the difference. So if you see, this has been an underlying debate within political theory for a very long time, that whether political science is important or whether philosophy is important. And hardly, if you have seen the Western political thought, the initial period, most of the thinkers, they were all philosophical. But later on, you can say the emergence of science. But the question is that which is important or what is important, what is there. So you can say by 1960s, in field of political theories, they started emphasizing more on need of developing scientific methods. But here you need to understand, when we say political science, it is not like your natural science. Political science is not physics or chemistry. It can use certain element, like in political science, we can, in certain theories, we can use mathematical formulas to present our theory. Understand? Can you certain manual, like for example, now when we do exit poll, opinion poll, that time they make use of certain mathematical formulas to calculate or to take what is the extrapolation that can be done based on the sample size. Get a point? So the need of science emerged, especially in the field of political theory, mainly after the First World War or at the time of Second World War. Okay, the reason was that in all other subjects, if you take sociology, anthropology, psychology, they had made great inroads into bringing what? Scientific elements. So that's why we say, when you say sociology and political science are different, they are not very different. They are like sister subjects. Sociology, you are mainly focusing on society. Political science, you are mainly focusing on state. The purpose of this thing is, your study is different. There you are studying society, here you are studying state. So if you take the scientific revolution that happened in every subject, especially after the Second World War, now they started bringing more what? Scientific elements like data collection, etc., to present their theories. Political science was, political theory was lagging behind. And that is when here also a movement started called as behavioralism, saying that what? We also want to study scientific understanding of politics. And there is this person called as David Easton. Okay. So David Easton was one of the first person, or who was one of the main role he played in the behavioral revolution in political science. So what David Easton told, look at all other subjects, they all move forward. And they are taking up questions, they are dealing with present problems of today. What has happened with political thinkers? They are still stuck with Plato, Socrates. So he said they are parasitically sitting on age-old ideas which are of no use of today. And he told we need to change the subject, bring more scientific elements into the subject. And he told values should be removed. There should be no room for values. He told what is the problem with values? With values, you cannot give a scientific theory. Value means there is always your personal bias towards it. So that is when this movement started, that we have to make political theory scientific. Or initial period they were very radical in that sense, we want to make it like natural science. But then David Easton himself after like 20 years or 30 years. Now he came out with another thing. He told, no, we are going in wrong direction now. Not wrong direction, slightly misguided. So he told, I said science should be there, but even he told values are also important. The moment you remove values, try to make political science completely a scientific subject. This Leo Strauss, there's a scholar called as Leo Strauss. What he told, if you try to make political science equivalent to natural science, like physics, chemistry, he told it can't be same. If you do like that, then you have lost your ability to distinguish between clean water and dirty water. You are only calculating how much water is there, but whether that water is fit for drinking or is it not fit for drinking, that is also equally important. So he told, you can't reduce the subject only to science. You can't separate values from the subject. And that is when they agreed, this David Easton, he told, facts and values both are important to the subject. And they ended this fact value dichotomy. Dichotomy means whether facts are important or values are important. They told both facts and values are equally important, and that is why this hacker told, every political theorist is partly a scientist and partly a philosopher. And they also understood now what? You can't make political science like physics or chemistry. The role of physics, chemistry is different. The role of political science is very different. But we do take scientific elements. Okay, for example, we can use mathematical formulations to present our theory. But the end goal of our theory is not only to develop some kind of methodological sophistication. The end goal of our theory is to how it can improve the society. Second point. So that is what David Easton, he told. What has happened when this behavioralism started? He told, political scientists have forgotten their main role. Their main role is not data collection. Their main role is to take up issues of the society and try to solve these issues of society. And that is when he told post-behavioralism. So post-behavioralism was not ending of behavioralism, it was a continuation of behavioralism, but with modification. Modification what? Now they told both facts and values are equally important. And that is when you can say currently that dichotomy no longer exists. Currently there is no debate whether science is important or values are important. Today everybody has come to an agreement that both values and facts equally important. So every political theorist, when he presents a theory, his theory can have three kinds of statements. One is what? Empirical statement. The other is what? Logical statement. Third one is what? Evaluative statement. So if you look at Plato, you will never find in Plato any kind of empirical statement. Give me any empirical statement from Plato what you have read. Tell me one kind of empirical statement which Plato has made. It is not empirical, right? Education is secondary. Theory is not education. Theory is what? Philosopher king. Theory of ideas. Theory of soul. These are not empirical statements. So largely you can say initial period, the Greek political thought, largely it was mainly based on logical statements and evaluative statements. But over a period of time, now empirical statements are also part of political theory. So that is why we say political theory comprises of political science and political philosophy. Understood? So what is political theory? A systematic understanding of political phenomenon. And how we can understand the systematic phenomenon? Three kinds of studies can be done: empirical study, logical study, evaluative. So that is why Andrew Hacker told what? Every political theorist is partly a scientist and partly a philosopher. So now we have to know what is the difference between political philosophy and political science. political philosophy and political science. So here, as you know, political philosophy stress is more on values, but here it is more on what? Facts. In political philosophy, it is non verifiable. What do you mean non verifiable? There cannot be any evidence given to it. Whereas in political science, you can say verifiable. It can be verified. Third is what? Here, what kind of questions we ask in political philosophy? We ask largely the questions deals with what ought to be. What do you mean by what ought to be? It should have been like this. Plato told it should have been this ideal state. But when we deal with political science, we are not questioning what ought to be. We are dealing with questions what it is. You are getting a point. What ought to be means how it should have been. How it should have been based on your values. You might tell there should have been democracy. Another person will there should be no democracy. That is why it is not verifiable. It is not based on facts. It's based on values. So here, what kind of questions we ask? Not what ought to be. We are dealing with what it is. What it is. Fourth one, if you look at the nature of political philosophy, it is largely what you can say prescriptive. Prescription means philosopher king should have been there, this should have been there. It is prescribing, and every prescription is based on what you think is right or wrong. Personal bias might be always there. So here you can say it is based on what? Largely it is prescriptive. But when you look at political science, largely it is what? Descriptive and explanatory. Descriptive and explanatory. Understood the major differences between political philosophy and political science. Values, facts, non-verifiable, verifiable. What question we ask? What ought to be? Or what we question is? What it is. This is prescriptive. This is descriptive. So political philosophy, it belongs to the sphere or questions of good or bad. In political philosophy, what kind of questions will come? Is it good or bad? Is this class good or bad? Subjective. Here, the question in political science, it's not good or bad. You can't ask questions regarding good or bad. You can only ask questions which are true or false. Today the class started at 7:30. True or false? False. Can be verified. Again a point. Difference between political philosophy and political science. So these are the differences that you will have to know between political science and political philosophy. Together, they comprise of what? Political theory. So, a political theory comprises of political philosophy as well as political science. Got it? What do you mean by political theory? What is meant by political science? What is meant by political philosophy? Understood? So the initial part, the subject theories were dominated by what? Philosophical theories. But later up they got dominated by what? Scientific theories. But today largely they say both values and facts are equally important. And that is what Andrew Hacker Andrew Hacker, he said, every political theorist is partly a scientist as well as a philosopher. Any doubt in this part? Understood? What do you mean by political theory? So in introduction to political theory, questions will come direct, it has come straightforward. Difference between political science and political philosophy, or comment on political theory. So when you write comment on political, you have to write everything. Political science, political philosophy, you can use this flow chart. You can give one example. Got it? Any doubt here? Anything which you did not understand? What is political science? What is So please remember, political science is not like natural science. There is a difference between natural science and political science. In chemistry, physics, we don't deal with the questions of good or bad. But in political science, we will deal with the questions of good or bad. Why? Because as we say, it is not completely scientific. We also use values. Got it? Now, same way, when we look at what is the difference between a political ideology and a political theory. Political theory as well as a political ideology. So this we have already discussed just now 2 minutes before, that when we did Hannah Arendt. So in a political theory, your main key understanding is to what? A disinterested search for better society. A disinterested search for a better society. But when you take a political ideology, it is an interested search for a better society. Meaning what? The person who is presenting the theory, he is not interested in the outcome. His main concern is what? This should help the society at large. So he is not interested the theory what he is presenting, whether it will personally benefit him or not. But that is not the case with a political ideology. Political ideology is always aimed at what? Capturing political power. So what you promote as the best is what benefits you personally. But in a political theory, you are not presenting the theory for your personal benefits. You are only presenting it with what? Larger benefit of the society. That is why it is a disinterested search for a better society. Here it is an interested search for a better society. In political theory, you are not interested in what? Power or to rule. That is not the end goal. But in political ideology, it is what? The means to what is the end? Capture of political power. And political theory is characterized by open mind. What do you mean characterized open mind? It is open to questioning. It can be questioned. It can be subjected to falsification. It can be subjected to falsification. What do you mean by falsification? Now let us think. Now this fellow he presents a theory. What is the theory he presents? He says crow is white in color. In his theory, you will write crow is white in color. He'll present evidence for it also. He'll click a photograph of a crow which is white in color. And his argument is what? Who told crow is black in color? There is a white crow now. So the theory of falsification means when you have presented a theory, that theory can be questioned by others and they might try to prove that theory wrong. Only when you pass the test of falsification, see, crows are black. There might be one white crow, but that does not make a statement. Tomorrow in prelims they give crows are black in color. Prelims question they'll give. Now this fellow will mark it wrong. He will tell, no sir, I have seen a white crow, it is next to my house. UPSC answer will come, it is black. Then you'll go fight with UPSC. No, I have proof, see there is white crow. But that does not, one white crow does not give an exception. If they had given a statement, all the crows in the world are black in color, then this fellow's argument will be correct. But if they have given a statement, crow is black in color, they have not told all crows are black in crows are, that's a general statement what we have made. You are understanding point? So any theorist who presents his theory, it should be questioned or subjected to, okay, whether his explanation is correct or not. What do you mean by a theory? For example, now he'll present a theory tomorrow. Let us say he's a political scientist, he presents a theory tomorrow, saying that BJP's victory in elections since 2014 is largely because of Narendra Modi. The whole thesis what he's presenting is it is only because of Modi BJP is winning. Now that theory might be questioned by her. Now her theory says that Modi factor is there, but along with Modi factor, there are other factors that has benefited the BJP, their organizational strength, etc., etc. So his theory, when he presents it, now there will be counter questions raised. How can you say that? Do you have evidence? He should provide evidence. He should tell, okay, look at vote share what BJP was getting before Modi was the PM candidate. But once Modi became the PM candidate, what is the vote share BJP is getting? Or the other question rises, has Modi been able to make BJP win in those areas which they have not won before? You are getting mind? The difference between a normal person and a theorist is that every person can make a statement, but every person is not a theorist. That's the difference. A theorist is a person who presents his explanation and he provides evidence for his explanation. And that evidence will be subjected to what? Cross-questioning. You're going to mind, see what I mean by a statement. Now I make a statement. All those who cleared in political science cleared because of me. It's a statement I make. Now he will raise a question. What is the guarantee that it is only because of you? Had they gone before elsewhere, had they failed there, they came here, did they pass because of you? Or he might say, maybe they had gone 3 times before. Collectively, all that helped now, especially when they came to you. There can be different scenarios, there can be different explanations. You are understanding what is a theory? So, for example, let us say Indus Valley civilization, why did it end? There are multiple theories. Understanding? So, every theory is not the absolute truth. Theory is just a possible explanation. So, a political theorist, when he gives his possible explanation, he is ready to test his explanation to what? Cross-questioning. He has open mind. Why is open mind? He is ready to change his theory if you are able to provide a very strong evidence against his theory. But a political ideology, it's a characteristic of what? Closed mind. No questioning. Now we'll tell, sir, no sir, because of me you passed. Sir, because of me you passed. Yes sir, because of you we passed. End goal. Everybody is happy. You're understanding the difference between a political ideology and a political theory. In political ideology, you have already discovered the truth. Every ideology is already truth has been discovered. You take any kind of religion, why religious wars happen, like crusades between Islam and Christianity, say Islam claim that we have discovered truth, this is the truth. Christians can know this is the truth. We'll kill each other if you don't agree with us. Least bothered of what is the truth. See, logical question. Now let us take, for example, let us take in Quran only it is written that those who don't practice Islam are kafirs. Let us say for argument's sake, okay, let us think that is the reality. Allah is the only true God. So do you think Allah will be so narrow-minded, mean-minded to say that you don't worship me, you don't call me Allah, you are calling me a different name, I am going to curse you? Then he can't be God, right? God is not a person who will selectively select people, you worship this way, you worship this means. The problem is what? There is something written in a book, let it be Bhagavad Gita, let it be Quran, let it be Bible, which you assume that is the absolute truth. You have not subjected that book to questioning. Why? Because the moment you question, when you are intolerant, means you don't agree with the view, you will take violent path. It can be in your house also. For example, like in my house, my mother says, don't eat non-veg on this day. Told why? I will not eat, okay, but I need a reason why. If you give me a very logical explanation, I will not eat. But there is no reason to it. Why? Don't talk too much, you just follow what I say. That is only called as ideological indoctrination. What is ideology? Here we are only dealing with political ideologies. And ideology can be also religious ideology. Again, mind, the same problem with religious ideologies, any religion you take, each religion claims that what? We have discovered the final truth. This is the final truth. There is no final truth to it. And anybody who questions it, now either your subject, like for example, you can say this Ajmal Kasab, when he was brainwashed, what they told, you sacrifice your life for your religion, you have 72 virgins waiting for you in heaven. First of all, who went to heaven, saw the 72 virgins, they came back to earth and they told, no, you sacrifice your life for your religion, there are 72 virgins waiting for you. And that is what we say, in an ideology, there is no element of questioning. An ideology is blind following. Political theory is not like that. Any theory can be questioned, will be questioned, should be questioned. You don't accept anything without what? Questioning. Plain simple, like you go to temple, you do 5 rounds, 6 rounds, 7 rounds, whatever is it. Why? See, I'm not telling there might be an explanation to it, but whether I don't know that explanation or maybe you don't know that explanation. As long as you are just doing it because somebody said, early mada mursati sutti. See, it might be controversial, but that is the reality. If you try to say anything regarding any religion, everybody will get offended. Simple, na? So these are customs or traditions practiced from historical times, and people even don't know why we are practicing it. For example, we say, night don't cut nails inside the house. Daridra vanbidutte. Means it is not good for your fortunes. The logical explanation to it is only simple. At a time when electricity was not there, when you cut your nails inside the house, the babies in the house who will be just randomly picking things might eat the nail or keep it on. That is why they used to say, cut nails during daytime, cut nails outside the house, not inside the house. But now that has become a practice, means blind practice. So that's why we say, even in political ideology, what is a political ideology? Means you have a preset idea. And you are saying that these are like what Hitler did. Aryans are supreme. Jews are inferior. Nobody questioned it. How? How Aryans are supreme? How Jews are inferior? Who said so? No, where it is just he told people, just believe. So that we say, that's the difference between a political theorist and a political ideology. So the purpose of political ideology is to capture power. Either capture power or to remain in power. What is purpose of political theory? To discover the truth. Understood? And that is why Andrew Hacker, he said political theory and political ideology are not same. Each have a different purpose. Got it? Understood? What is the difference between political theory and political ideology. Take communism as a political ideology. Simple, Marx told communism will be established, world will be free from any kind of political ideology. You can take like liberalism, free market, best market. But that's an ideology. It becomes a theory when you are ready to explore that and find, okay, has it worked all times? Got it? But it becomes an ideology when you have assumed it is the truth and you are not ready to question the political idea. So that is the difference between political theory and political ideology. Any doubt? So understood what is a political theory, what is political science, what is political philosophy, difference between the two, and what is the difference between political theory and political ideology. So in the next class we will take up decline of political theory. Decline means same thing what we have read. I told now there were two declines. One during 1940s, because they told they're only stressing on philosophy, they're ignoring science. The problem what happened, there is too much of science, there is no values. Again the subject is losing relevance. So you have two sides here. One side who is supporting that we need science, the other side who is supporting we need values and philosophy. But both of them later by 1970s will agree that what? Both science and both philosophy are integral part of political theory. That is only decline of political theory, but we are going to read why did it decline in 1940s, that is the first decline. Second decline happens in 1970s. Why did it decline? That we'll have to look into, and that will end your topic. Then we'll have to go into approaches to understanding politics. Means when we understand politics, there are different ways you can understand politics. Historical approach, looking back in history to understand politics. There is philosophical approach based on moral values, like Plato, he used philosophical approach. Or there is legal approach, studying constitutions, Aristotle. Understood? So there are two types of approaches, traditional approaches, modern approaches. So we have to look at what are the traditional approaches, what are the criticism against them, and why did the modern approach came, and what are the different modern approaches. That will end your topic on approaches to political theory. Then we will go into the topic of ideologies. Okay. So tomorrow we will do this. What is that? Approaches and decline of political theory. So in approaches only you have behavioralism, post-behavioralism. That is covered in that topic itself. Understood? These are all interlinked. Got it? Because behavioralism is also linked to decline of political theory. That I will explain tomorrow. The first decline led to rise of behavioralism. Second decline led to rise of post-behavioralism. So that you need to understand what is behavioralism, what is post-behavioralism, why did it arise. Got it? But for now, understand what is political theory, political science, political philosophy, what is political ideology. Tomorrow we will look into decline of political theory. So notes, everything is there. You can go through the notes.